Welcome back for another Victory at Sea unboxing. So today what we're going to be unboxing is the Imperial Japanese Navy Yamato battleship. So before we get into this, a couple of things. This is going to be the last of our pseudo unboxings. This is something that I bought previously, I assembled, haven't gotten around to painting it yet, but not a true unboxing, and I just want to make that clear before I open the box and you see what I have here. There is assembly required. I have already assembled the parts onto the ship. In the future, any unboxings after this will be traditional unboxings that you will see exactly how everything is packed and how you should expect things when you purchase something for Victory at Sea. Now, the last thing that I want to do before we get into this, I just wanted to explain that this ship is why I got into the game, and I just want to explain that a little bit. The Yamato caught my eye as soon as I saw it on the shelf at my local store. I picked it up and I've been eyeing the game ever since and finally decided to dive in. The reason why the Yamato caught my eye is growing up, when I would get home from school, there was a cartoon on called Star Blazers. Star Blazers, anime, futuristic space cartoon, and it featured the Yamato. What they did, I'm not going to get too much into it, but the premise of the cartoon is they raise the Yamato. Earth is under attack. They raise the Yamato from the bottom of the ocean. It was sunk by the U.S. in World War II. It was completely refurbished and refitted and brought to space to fight battles in space. Seems a little odd now, now that I think about the whole premise, why would that ever be the case? Because it wouldn't, but I loved the cartoon, and that's why I knew of the Yamato, and that is what caught my eye, and that's why I bought this ship. So just so the Yamato and its sister ship were the largest battleships ever built. So bigger than the Mighty Mo by a percentage, not a huge percentage, but somewhat. I explained in our two-player starter that big difference between the U.S. Navy and the Japanese Navy in World War II is the Japanese put all kinds of resources into each individual ship, outfitting them with way more guns and capabilities than any individual U.S. ship. But the U.S. went with more ships, more, a little bit more speed, but pretty much just outnumbering the Japanese. And that's really what the naval battle in World War II came down to. It was a little bit of a war of attrition, and the U.S., just by having more ships and being able to bring more individual ships to bear on the fewer Japanese ships, is what was the downfall of the Japanese Navy. Regardless of the fact that the individual Japanese ships may have been more powerful from an armor and armament standpoint. So let's get into this unboxing and see what we get in the box. You can probably expect this is going to be very similar to what we saw with the Missouri, USS Missouri. So again, a huge chunk of resin, a huge ship, longer than the box itself. You can see I have assembled the metal, the metal parts. So our big guns, a lot more large, small guns here, the bridge, antennas, cranes, aircraft launchers, everything else. Before we get into the other contents of the box, I'll just bring in the Missouri as a comparison. So in terms of the models, they're very similar in size. If you look at them top down, the Yamato is wider, so it did displace more, but it wasn't significantly bigger than the Missouri. But when we look at its ship card, it has far more armament than the Missouri did. So let's see what else is in the box. And we will give a little bit of a refocus so we can make sure that we can read the card. So we get our damage sliders, which we get in everything. Hold on to those, you're going to need them. We get our Care for Warlord Resin information sheet. If this is your first purchase, make sure you read it before you assemble everything. And then we have our ship card. So we're going to compare that really quickly to our Missouri card. And you can see just by looking at the card itself, far more weapons to choose from than the Missouri did. And in comparison, so we have 850 points for the Missouri and 1,000 points for the Yamato. I am almost positive that the Yamato is the most expensive points-wise ship in the game. It's a battleship. Its flank speed is 5, so the Missouri was a little bit faster. Its armor was 7 though, so it had more armor than the Missouri. And its hull is 146 with 48 before it becomes critically damaged, which is significantly more than the Missouri. Here we have aircraft 7, armored deck to be torpedo belt 3. You'll notice that the Yamato is missing the advanced radar. The US picked up radar and advanced their radar capabilities much quicker than the Japanese did, which is another reason why the US ended up prevailing in the Pacific. And then we have all of our other weapons. I'll try and zoom in a little bit so we can see all of the capabilities of the Yamato. So we see that we have our A and B turrets in the front, similar to the Missouri. They're 3 18.1 inch guns, where the US had 16 inch guns, so bigger shell. The Y turret, same thing. We have our anti-aircraft turrets, but then we have a P turret, an S turret, a YY turret. Those are all 6.1 inch guns. So there's one on the port, one on the starboard, one in the front, and one in the back here. We have some light guns, and so that was an AA turret, not AA battery. And then we have our AA battery here. So A, B, and Y have ranges of 11 for point blank, then 23, 34, and 46. They're throwing 3 attack dice, just like the Missouri was. Armor piercing of +2, same as Missouri, but they do get 4 damage dice instead of 3. So for every hit, instead of rolling 3 additional dice, they're going to be rolling 4. Also heavy, so you can't shoot small fast ships at point blank range. The 4 smaller turrets, the 6.1 inch turrets, you can see all the different arcs there. The port and the starboard can only shoot to the port and the starboard. The one in the front or towards the bow of the ship can shoot over the bow, the port, and the starboard, and the one in the rear, similarly. They have ranges of 7, 15, 22, and 30. You're going to throw 2 attack dice each. They do get a -1 modifier for armor piercing though, so not great against armor. And they're going to throw 1 attack dice for each, 1 damage dice for each attack dice that hits. No traits on any of those. Because of the decrease in, because they're not great against armor, so you would want the big guns shooting at something like the Missouri, but these lighter guns might be shooting at things like cruisers and destroyers and things like that. They don't have the heavy trait, so they can train themselves on destroyers at point blank range. Then we have our light guns, which is 12 5-inch guns at 4, 8, 12, 16, throwing 8 attack dice. They have a -2 modifier for armor piercing, 1 damage dice. They're dual purpose, so can be used against aircraft. They're restricted, so remember means you have the dice. If you're going to shoot out of either, depending on which side you're shooting at, you can't shoot all of the dice from one side of the ship. You have to half the number of dice. And they are weak so that they can't cause critical effects. And the AA battery is pretty limited to start out, just the local one. And then on the rear of the card, again, real life statistics, real life history of the Musashi and the Yamato, which were the 2 ships in the class. And again, largest battleships ever built. And then the refits, all or mostly all. Well, the Musashi gets some radar benefits here, the Yamato gets some radar benefits here, and then the other benefits are all to the AA in order to increase their anti-aircraft capabilities. But really the Yamato doesn't look like it can compete with the Missouri for anti-aircraft until possibly 1945. But by that point, the Missouri is also going to have some refits for AA. But that's pretty significant. Again, the ship that got me into the game, extremely happy I have it. Once again, probably not the most practical first ship in the game, but it's going to look great painted up, look great in my shelf until I'm at a point where I can feel like I can field a fleet with this included and be successful with it. So thank you very much. Like and subscribe, especially if you're into Victory at Sea and it's something that you might be interested in. Keep on gaming. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.